the world that your soul created can trap you. That's called the fall. So you could create a world, and the world you created can trap you. Whenever you lose control of your creation of worlds and moving around in the void, whenever you lose control of that, you become the fallen. Whenever you gain control of that, you become a god. And this brings us to the whole snake in the garden. Okay? And Prometheus. Alright? So, and this is also called Gnosis. The earliest Christians were called Gnostics. Why were they called Gnostics? The word knowledge, people always wonder why they put the K, why they can't just spell it Nowledge. Why they got to put the K in front, even though it's silent? You know, English language came from older languages, African languages, really. And that's why it's called phonetics, because Phoenicia was in Africa, you know. And you have to understand that it has nothing to do with morality. Morality is a factor that you should consider based on the environment that you find yourself and the causes of, the laws of cause and effect. But ultimately, that morality cannot save you from that world. So you could be good all you want, but you could return to that world if you don't do certain things. And you could be as bad as a motherfucker and evil as a motherfucker, and if you do the right thing, you're not going to return to that world. And you will not be held by the laws of that world. So morality is good in the context of the world you live in, but ultimately is not a fundamental or necessary, is not a sufficient requirement. Pardon me. Okay? Is not a fundamental or sufficient requirement for escaping hell. And by hell we mean earth. And the reason why we call earth hell is because when the human soul loses its ability to change its reality the way you change a TV program, then the world becomes hell. If the soul still has the ability to wake up into any dimension it wants to, then it's not hell anymore, because it's the soul creating the dimension it likes. Okay? So this is the difference between being gods and being man. This is what the snake was trying to tell Adam and Eve in the garden, which is just an allegory. The allegory being that if you remain here, you'll be an animal. If you leave here, you'll be a god. So the fruit is just an allegory for information. When they say the tree is just an allegory for information. The tree of life is an allegory for science. By science, conventional science, we mean the things that you could touch, the things that you could see, your physical environment. It's called the tree of life. And these physical forces are called elementals. All right? And they operate by rules and principles. And if you manipulate the principles properly, you will be able to manipulate your environment in a certain way if you understand the principles properly, if you study them. However, they're not going to get you out there if you don't know something. There's something you're supposed to know. And if you don't know that thing, you can manipulate all you want. It's not going to get you out of it. You're going to be right back there. And you're going to forget all the shit that you learned in the previous life. You fuck around and be born as a peasant in fucking India. You have to start all over again. Because it's the wheel of samsara. You know? So there's something that you're supposed to know. And that's why it's called Gnosis. And the knowledge, the K in the knowledge replace the G in the Gnosis. So it's Gnosis, to know the ish or the shish. Okay, as we talked about, the shish is darkness. Whenever you see she, okay, nshi. In Igbo, it's called nshi or eshi. Where you get the word ogwashi uku, ogwonshi uku, the kindling of darkness in a high state is the meaning of that town in Delta State called Ogwashi uku, which is ungwo nshiuku. To gwo something means to kindle it. Gwo is to kindle it. Nshi means dark matter. Uku means highest. Alright, so ungwo nshiuku means the place where they kindled the dark matter at a high state, which eventually became Ogwashuku, which is the name of a town in Delta State, Nigeria. So the Nshi or Sh is the oldest name for God or the force. Okay, so force itself in Igbo is Ofonshi, which is the staff of Nshi, which is Nshi moving. This is where you get the word force. Igbo language is a codex, it's not a language. Okay, it's the root of all languages. Alright? So, Goetia is Ngwonshi, which is the kindling of Unshi. Alright? So, Gnosis is to know Nshi, to know the void. What is the void? What do you understand by the void? The void is dark matter, is emptiness. Okay? On this empty plate, you could build anything. You could project anything. In the Old Testament, it was called the waters. Why did they use water? They use water because water doesn't have smell, doesn't have taste, doesn't have color. Water is the closest thing you could use to describe the void. And you could assume the shape of anything you want. So, in the spiritual higher worlds, when you encounter certain things, you have to find something in the terrestrial world that's closest to it to teach people. Some of the things you encounter in the spiritual world, there's nothing on this world that you could use to teach it. There's nothing in this realm that is like those things. But when it comes to the force, the closest thing to the force is the character of the liquid, which means it's colorless, it's tasteless, and it could assume any shape. It could be hard as a rock. It could evaporate and be as steam. It could flow and, just be anywhere at any time. It's indestructible. All right? So it was called the waters, dark water. It's in the beginning was the water. This is a void. Okay? In Igbo, it's called Onunu. Onununshi. Okay? That's where you get the word Johannes. Ionunu. Johanna. Ionunu. They say it's a Sumerian word, but there's nowhere like Sumeria. If you read Catherine Achalonu's book, she tells you that Sumeria and all that is actually in Igbo. From Johanna, you get John, but there's no J in the ancient language. So he's Johannes. The earliest name for John is Johannes. But it stemmed from Ionunu, which means Iyi means a place you fetch water, a water place. Onunu means void or depth. Bottomless pit. Onunu is a bottomless pit or pit. All right? Iyi Onunu means water of the bottomless pit, which is a void. It doesn't have up, down, side. It doesn't have beginning or end. It's an endless darkness upon which you project reality. You got to understand these concepts because these are symbols also, and they appear all over your religious iconography and your spiritual iconography. And because of the people don't understand these concepts, they take in lies that trap them. So like a lie that you could die. Okay? So, it brings us back to the dimensions of reality. So from the inside looking out, you never die. You would never experience a time where you died. You may change forms without knowing, but you're always going to be alive. However, from the outside looking in, people going to see you get buried. It's the two dimensions. All right? It's the two pillars at the temple. So, Gnosis, or the Gnostics, were the earliest forms of Christianity. And they were Proto-African. It's an African concept. By African, we mean the earliest people that had it were black people. And it doesn't restrict it to the continent of Africa, but we're using Africa for lack of better words. That means the black people that live in America, in Australia, in India, everybody shared these concepts all over the world. All right? So people call it Pangea, but that's just a Latin name that means pan means everything, and gea means geography or land. So Pangea is all of the land, which is really not a name of a place, just a description. You know, it was a time where the black people were at their peak. And when they had reached the highest form of civilization, they were split in two. Some of them realized that this place was actually a prison. Some of them wanted to keep staying here. And that's what caused the war. And these wars were fought with devastating weapons. And a side of them wanted to continue living in the void and create more voids to live in, and putting these souls into these voids to live in these voids. The other branch of them wanted to just destroy everything and go back to the original existence and give people their freedom, where they won't be trapped in flesh without knowing and lose their memory. And if you read the Bhagavad Gita, you know, they describe these ancient wars which the Igbo fought. All right? And a lot of these people, there was a lot of advanced technology at this time. A lot of them was gene splicing and the creation of animals and other human beings. All right? So when they tell you that there was a war in heaven and the demons were chased down on earth, you should look at it like this. If there's a war in this world right now and some group of scientists created a virtual reality world that looked just like this world and plugged people in there to continue to be trapped and to live in this virtual reality world, to control them and use their energy, if you have a branch of humans that were against it, these humans will naturally hack their way into this new world to destroy it, and these will be the demons. All right? Thank you, Anat, for typing the Bhagavad Gita. So, we're gonna let's look at the concept of the Gnosis. It says once you know that your entire skin and head and body is a virtual reality headset. If you go to the mall, you put that headset on. Everywhere you look, you're gonna see something. But there's nothing behind you at any time until you look there. All right? So, but the headset itself is what creates the world. The world is in the headset. That's why you're able to see it. But your friend could be standing right next to you while you're wearing that virtual reality headset. You're not going to know. You're not going to see him. And this is what it means by worlds within worlds. The headset gives you parameters of what to see. But while you got that headset on, you and your boy could be at the mall. He'd be standing right next to you, and you wouldn't see him if all you knew was that headset. If you were born with that headset, and that's all you knew, right? You will never know that there were beings standing right next to you in a real world. You walk around in that virtual world thinking that's all the world you got. This is the concept. And you see that concept displayed in, what's that movie? Something's World. Freeman's World, or with what's that white boy name? I can't remember this nigga. The nigga that did Mask. The white boy that did Mask. You know, where everybody was in on it, but he wasn't. You know. I'm gonna remember that movie. Truman Show. Thank you, Mr. Tay Carney, Truman Show. That's the name of that movie. Jim Carrey, thank you or not. Truman Show, Jim Carrey. And this is the concept again, where they're giving you the truth right in your eyes of your world. You know, they're telling you. Okay? Truman, yeah. So this is the concept of gnosis, that you should know that your world is not real. It's a very, very terrible truth for people that's already locked in to the reality. So we're going to move on. So the virtual reality headset allows you to touch the hologram, feel the hologram through the agency of your spinal cord. So your spinal cord gives you the impression that the things in the hologram are real. The hologram being void is not there. But you're given the apparatus to feel something that's not there. Also, science tells you that the atom is 99.9% space. So if the atom is 99.9% space, then there's no reality. Reality is 0.001, which is really non-existent. Also, there's an experiment called the double slit experiment in science, which the atoms behave differently when the scientist looks in the microscope. But if the scientist doesn't look in the microscope, the atoms behave as waves. But the moment that the scientist looks in the microscope to observe the atoms behave like particles. So that means that the perception of the scientist controls the behavior of the atom. This tells you that there's no atom. Just like the boy told Neo, there's no spoon. It's you looking at an atom to make you think is real. The atom is in front of you. What you call an atom is a reflection of a force in you. That's why when you don't look at it is one way, when you look at it is a different way. All right? This is gnosis. That's what it's called, gnosis. To teach you of your world and how your world really is. So the opposite of that is the deception of religion. Where religion traps you or binds you. That's what the Latin word for religion is religare. It's religare, which is to bind something. So it binds you to the physical world by diverting your attention away from your inner world to everything around you, which you feel you could touch, but it never tells you that you're touching it is only an illusion of your spinal cord or your senses. They never teach you that in school. So they teach you about everything outside of yourself and make you think that you're living inside something. But the thing you're living in is actually coming from inside of you. The same way a movie come from a movie projector or somebody singing come out the radio. You can't break the radio, see the motherfucking singing in the radio because the radio only picking up the singing. All right? So this is gnosis. And the Gnostics were killed off by the church, the Roman church. And the primary pillars of the new dispensation, or what they call the dark age, is that you are living in a planet in a ball, hurling through space, and everything is happening outside of you, and you're reacting to it. Gnosis teaches you that everything is happening inside of you, and you're projecting it. Okay? That's the main thing, main difference. So most of your movies in Hollywood and everything, when you see the woman carrying the light, that's going to lead us into Prometheus. Now we're going to segue into Prometheus because Prometheus stole fire or light and gave it to man. All right. So whenever you see the Columbia woman holding the fire, wearing the white and blue, that you're talking about Gnostics or the Gnosis. Whenever you get the idea that you're living in space and there's a man and his son that live in the sky and they're looking at you from outside of yourself, and you're disconnected from everything as an individual, instead of you projecting the whole thing as an individual, then you become bound to the earth. That's what you become, a religious or a religare person. Okay, it's the main difference. The Gnostics were also called the Cathars. In the persecution of the Cathars, these are code names for Africans. Cathars, Gnostics, Phoenicians, Egyptians, what else? All these names are just mumbo jumbo gibberish created to just confuse people into thinking that these were different empires and different people, but they're all the same people. It's just a bunch of niggas around the world.